Today, I want to run through the Impaler build and discuss a few things in the VXP target briefly. Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. As I get started, I want to say that the hash code for this will be available in my builds document, which is linked in the description of all of my recent YouTube videos. You can go ahead and open that up. It will bring you to one of these pages right here. You can click through and find pictures and videos and updates if I do update the build a little bit when the flagship comes out, which is a possibility. I will also mention that this is generally based on the Kixeye strategy guide, which seems to be lacking a little bit of information in some ways, and will not tell you things like if the drones and the frigate drones, for example, are vulnerable to countermeasures. I'm guessing that they are not, which is going to recommend or influence my recommendations in this video. Let's go ahead and get started with the build. Now this hull has 25 million armor points, which will be important to consider when the flagship comes out. In terms of the armor, that's an easy one to knock out right at the bat. I'm going to go for 2 and 2. Whenever I seem to guess which way the damage lanes, it seems to be opposite, and this cycle I'm going to guess that we will get more explosive damage, especially if you auto. I don't really tilt my armors anymore. The survival numbers are quite small compared to what you will have on the hull. Now this hull is pretty interesting in terms of a base stat and has some countermeasure reload, a ton of concussive damage, 700% basic I believe, and really helps out a ton in terms of that, which you get even more with all the specials you'll throw on there. It is also a depth charge hull, which may be worth considering, and has no interesting special abilities on these regular 4 ships other than the 40 range survival boost. With the weapons, you have 4 slots that can be countermeasures, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is over on the left here. I think that 2 will be a pretty solid start for countermeasures. As I mentioned, you do not necessarily want to use gales or sprints because Kixeye likes to cheat a little bit and not make things work even though they say they should, which they don't even tell us clearly. In any case, I have yet to see sprint or gale shooting in these targets. If they do shoot and they do fire, throw them on there, but I have yet to see them shooting, although admittedly I haven't played around in these VXP targets quite extensively. Once those are on, go ahead and throw on the Winchglaive Gatling gun, which is actually slightly worse than the previous depth charges until it gets completely wound up. You get a plus 400% bonus reload, which will cut your reload time down insanely low when you have this thing wound up and have the rest of the specials on there. So as this thing continues to fire, it gets better, and we'll have a decay time there of several seconds with a quite large maximum stats. The option for the U1 is going to be the weapon that came out in the Forsaken mission, surprise, surprise. If you don't have that, heavy gas blaster may be an alternative. In terms of the specials, I'm going to do my best to give you a few different options between those, and I'm going to start with the engines. Now, your first choice here is the Darklight engine, 45k survival, rest of the stats are standard. If you don't have this, the tier 11.51, so the one that came out half a tier ago, is at 32k survival with the same stats and is probably going to be almost equivalent. The survival difference of 13k here is very, very minimal, and if you don't have the Darklight, I would just throw on the old one and not worry about getting it. But I've got it since it came out in a quite easy pillage, so I'm going to use it. Next up is a special that came out with the ship, which is going to be one of the concussive damage specials, which I will have several on this ship. This is the Haywire Speed Loaders, will give you concussive reload and damage. If you don't have this, using something like the Shadow Strike system, which is all the way up here, may be your best alternative that I've been able to find. But concussive reload and damage will be great. The plus 135 damage helps much more than the plus 90% reload. Jumping back over to the other special that came out with the ship, this is a regular unlimited special and is the Hexfire Gatling barrels. This gives you splash damage reduction, which works a little bit better than it used to, concussive damage, which is great, and splash. Notice that it is interesting in how it used to block out in some of the behavior of what splash blocks out here. Special slot number 4 is going to be a countermeasure special because we do have countermeasures on here, and if you have CMs, they should be boosted by something. I'm going to recommend the Kenjutsu countermeasure system because the range and reload are really high for countermeasures. The concussive accuracy is not going to help if we have a dumbfire weapon like depth charges with splash and no accuracy, which these are, so you're not putting it on here for this. There really are no other options, and there is nothing that helps countermeasure accuracy, or I would use that. Just the countermeasure range and reload. This is the best one, better than something which would be a good alternative, which would be maybe your hydroatomizer nozzle, which has a plus 30% concussive reload boosting, which is interesting here. But the countermeasure range at 75 and the reload at 30 are lower than the 75 and 100, so I'm going to go ahead and use the better one for the countermeasures. Special slot number 5 is going to be one that is more good on average, I should say, and this is the Iron Feather Battery at plus 55% concussive damage. The other option for you here would be something like the Impact Overdrive, which is several tiers older, although depth charge synergy in terms of the concussive damage and the critical hit chance does work quite well, and because of the large number of projectiles, you get the expectation almost all the time there. This is a pretty good option using Impact Overdrive. I would consider that here, but Iron Feather Battery is going to be what most people will go for, so that is what I will show. The last special is going to have a few options, one of which is the Blowback Assembly. Will give you projectile speed, splash, and spread, negative spread I should say, and will give you some splash. This generally works well with depth charges, especially if you have a hard time hitting. However, I tend to lean a little bit more defensively and use a special like the Gutter Chute Exhaust, which is a tier 11, so 2 ships ago. And this will give you evade, where a little bit is great. Concussive reload is okay, 30% is pretty small, especially when you round up. But this is on here for the plus 35% combat speed, which to me is a defensive attribute, and we need a little bit more defense with this ship, and we need a faster combat speed. This does get it all the way up here to a 114 combat speed, which you may need to outrun the clouds in these targets. So there you go, that is my build video for the Impaler. If you have questions, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thank you to those whose names appear on screen now. They're helping keep videos like this possible. And I'm going to go ahead and say that this is Derpy, signing out, helping you be a better pirate.